Breaking tonight in a major world exclusive interview with GBNews star Nigel Farage, Donald Trump has tackled every big issue in international politics. And speaking from Scotland, the former US president, who is running for the Republican nomination, has slammed the troubled and scandal-plagued ex-First Minister of Scotland, scheming Sturgeon, for damaging her nation. Trump weighed in on the shocking case of double rapist Isla Bryson, who exposed the failing SNP's sick gender reform bill after he was sent to a women's prison. Watch.
Well, I think a lot of countries have had enough of it, what's going on. And I know that case, and I thought it was terrible. And I guess it helped ruin her career. I think she had other reasons also. But I just felt she didn't love Scotland. Well, they just said, I just walked by and there was a big crowd for a wedding, a beautiful wedding, incredible people. And they were not happy with the people that were running Scotland, let's put it that way. They said, run for First Minister, sir, run for First Minister.
One of about 20 massive scoops from that fascinating sit-down. So to react now, I'm delighted to be joined by the man behind the extraordinary exclusive interview, Nigel Farage, live from Scotland, and also senior advisor to Trump's presidential campaign, Jason Miller. So look, Nigel, we've got lots to unpick here, but can we start with Scotland? Because obviously this is a huge scandal, what's going on in Scotland at the moment. Most of the mainstream media in the UK seem to want to ignore what's going on. So it's very significant, isn't it, to see Trump talking in this way about the failed regime of Nicola Sturgeon?
Well, look, I mean, 3 weeks ago we had Sleepy Joe spending 4 days in Ireland because his great-great-grandparents left there in 1840. But hey, I'm Irish, despite the fact Biden's an English name and he's got relations in Surrey. Donald Trump has a lot more Scotland in him than Joe Biden has Ireland in him. He clearly admired and loved his mother, Mary MacLeod, hugely. She was a West Coaster, of course, Western Isles. And that was why Turnberry was the most appropriate place, I thought, to meet him. He cares a lot about Scotland. This is the first American president, possibly in decades, that really cares about the relationship with the UK. And it's there within him at an emotional level. Make no mistake about any of that. I thought what he said about Sturgeon was interesting. Basically, what he's saying is that her actions were against the interests of Scotland, that Scotland became a place that rather than put money into, people took money out of. That was said with great, great passion. He was fairly neutral about the new First Minister, but then he doesn't really know him very well. I did remind him of one or two of the quotes. But no, I thought the stuff he said on Scotland was very powerful, very interesting. And let me tell you, this Turnberry Hotel, Golf and Spa Complex, in the height of season, employs 500 well-paid people. Without it, goodness knows where this coastline would be. So, this is really important stuff. And the idea that a First Minister wouldn't encourage someone like Donald Trump to invest, rather want to have a fight with him the whole time. I thought he highlighted that pretty well.
I know, it's a brilliant hotel, Turnberry. And Jason Miller, you can see Trump's passion for the nation, but it is shocking when you think Sturgeon never made any attempt to build a relationship with him because of his politics, despite the huge investment he makes into Scotland.
No, Jim, you're exactly right. And we have a phrase here in the U.S. that everything woke turns to, well, I'll say rubbish so Ofcom doesn't smack down our good friends at GBNews. But what I was really struck by is not just the kinship between President Trump and Nigel, which was just a great thing to watch unfold on camera, but the affinity that President Trump has for not just Scotland and England, but the UK overall. And if you live in the UK and you're concerned about the relationship with the US, if you're concerned about the safety and the need to work together to deter those who are threatening both the UK and the US, then President Trump showed that the relationship between the two countries will get much better if he's back in the White House.
Well, indeed, because Trump also gave us a reminder of the special relationship that could have been as he directed very warm words towards the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. Watch.
I liked him so much, I still like him, but he really went a little bit on the liberal side. I mean, he all of a sudden became an environmentalist, and I'm talking about probably in a negative way, too much. look, we all want to protect the environment. Nobody does more than I do. I do a lot of jobs. Look at this. This was done environmentally so incredible. Turnberry, Aberdeen. But something happened. He changed. And a wonderful guy. He's a friend of mine.
So, Nigel, he didn't rule out a possibility of a Boris comeback later on in the interview, did he?
No, he didn't. But I mean, come on, let's be realistic, Dan. Whatever you and I may think of Rishi Sunak and his Blairite spin, the one thing he's brought to the Conservative Party is stability over the total and absolute chaos of Boris Johnson. And maybe you and I don't quite see eye to eye.
No, I don't agree with that. But yes, I understand where you're coming from.
But what I really got there was the sense of disappointment that Boris had become the inheritor of the Brexit legacy. And hey, I'd made his life pretty easy. You know, I'd helped him in many ways.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think Boris would even
Which Trump gave you credit for tonight.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, you know, if I hadn't got rid of Mrs. May with the Brexit Party, Boris would never have been PM. But I think what Trump feels is what I feel, that they had this 80-seat majority. The first time in almost 40 years, there was an opportunity to really be conservative, to really be radical, to really change things. And Boris blew it. And, you know, Trump said how disappointed he was in that sense with this move towards the green agenda. But the most telling part on the Conservatives was Trump said they'd moved to the far left.
Yeah.
Now,
which on some things they have. Come on. Net zero or nut zero, maybe, as we should call it.
But my belief with these interviews is the public are bored with one-on-one punch-ups. What is more interesting is to hear what people actually have to say, to let them speak. And whether that's Donald Trump or a bunch of lunatics that want to disrupt the Grand National, I try and let people have their own say. Now,
well, you did.
Maybe.
Because you weren't trying to trip him up all the time.
No, I wanted to hear what he had to say about things. I disagree with him on the emphasis on a stolen election and other things like that. But maybe far left is a bit over the top. But truth is, this is the least conservative government we have ever had in the history of our nation. And we're faced with a choice between two forms of social democracy. And I said to him, maybe 13 years in power is too long. He said, no, not necessarily if they'd stayed true to being conservative.
Well, I actually thought that was a really good point. Jason Miller, it also really struck me that Trump was very honest about the fact that he doesn't have a relationship with Rishi Sunak, the current Prime Minister of this country. Now, that feels very strange to me. You would have seen this week members of Sunak's cabinet meeting with Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor. Do you think it's wrong that Trump's in the country and Sunak hasn't tried to meet him or reached out to him, or has he behind the scenes?
Well, in fairness, keep in mind that the UK has had several prime ministers in the last year or so.
Oh, so don't remind us. Don't remind us.
There's a little bit of rotating at the top. But I think it was notable that President Trump, at least from the U.S. perspective, we had somebody paying respect to the king during the week of coronation. I mean, these things don't come along very often. And for Joe Biden to come over to the UK, to Northern Ireland, and to Ireland, not even come over to London, not even to address anything dealing with the coronation or the king. I thought it was really disrespectful. I thought it set just a really bad tone and it was poor form. So at least with President Trump, the U.S. is well represented, and I like that. I'm not too worried about the Rishi Sunak part. I mean, Rishi's going to stay out of U.S. politics as much as he can. But with President Trump, we see what the future can look like.
And Nigel, I've got to ask you about that great moment where you and Trump had a respectful disagreement about Prince Harry. And I have to be honest with you, Nigel, I'm with Trump on this. I'm hardline when it comes to Harry. Why on earth should Harry be at the coronation after everything he said about his family in Spare? And that was the clear implication from Trump there. He doesn't think he should be there at all.
No, and on merit, on pure merit, after the disgusting things that were said in that book, especially about Camilla, you can't say Trump is wrong. But there is something that goes over, above, and beyond that. And that is, as a parent, it is incredible what you forgive your children for. I'm not speaking about my parents, by the way, but it is incredible what you will forgive. And at the end of the day, it's still his son. So I get why the invitation went out. And you can argue protocol and all of these things. He is still Charles's son. I get the invitation. Yep. And I have to say, I think it's right that Harry attends, even if it is very, very brief.
Jason Miller, just a quick final word from you. The polls are looking incredibly strong for you at the moment. You're obviously now back as a formal advisor for the 2024 campaign. Are you worried at all about DeSantis? Do you think it was interesting that he made a trip to the UK? Is he trying to furnish himself with foreign affairs credentials before declaring his candidacy? Or is DeSantis actually not a concern given you're stomping him in the polls?
Well, we take everyone seriously, but it's not of concern. I think what Ron DeSantis is finding out is that narcissism and inexperience are a dangerous combination when you're running for president. I think that's why he's 46 points behind President Trump. Well, I mean, just to give you the unvarnished straight scoop here. But the more telling point, Dan and Nigel as well, is that President Trump is leading Joe Biden in the general election polls. Another poll out today with President Trump leading by 7 points. And with the country heading toward a recession, with all the economic indicators looking very negative, it's going to be tough for Joe Biden to still be president after 2024. President Trump is very well positioned as we move into this next year. And I tell you, having been a veteran of 2016, 2020, and now 2024, I have never seen him this focused and wanting it this badly as he is right now.
And Nigel nodding in agreement. Well, look, it was an absolutely fascinating interview. As I say, Nigel, scoop after scoop. It's currently the main splash on the Daily Mail website, so it's going international. Thank you so much to Nigel and, of course, senior advisor to Donald Trump's 2024 campaign, Jason Miller.